The Beef and Barnzy Show, brought to you by Bowlersmart.com, trusted by bowlers around the world since 2004. By Lightning Strikes Bowl, home of Bowlers Mart Pro Shop. By Platinum Ford, drive the difference. By Fire Lake Bowling Center, 24 state-of-the-art lanes. By True Grit Coatings, drive on our passion. By Roll to Grip, king of them all. By 900 Global, striking worldwide. Beef and Barnzy Show, brought to you by
Good morning and welcome to the Beef and Barnzy Show, and the replay of Tina in the other room. How are you? We are having a rare Monday show as travel and tour dictates different circumstances. Tomorrow will be a travel day for Stu, and so we are going to
we're going to break it down. We're going to break down what we've been using, because I know lots of people like to talk about balls. We're going to give Chris a platform to revel in his Kansas City Chiefs victory yesterday. I will try not to be bitter, because at the same time, although I wanted the Chiefs to lose, I didn't really want the Eagles to win. So it wasn't my team who got jobbed. So I would appreciate people not posting, but the guy said it was a hold. I don't think anybody was disputing it was a hold.
It really is one of those things, like lots of things. Yes, there's a penalty. The way the game was called, and I'm kind of a believer of if it doesn't impact the game, you don't really call it. And I don't think that, especially compared to how, like I said, the rest of the game was called. There was a lot of, they let him play.
Yeah.
And to call that there now would have changed anything. Butker would have had to kick a 45-yarder or something like that instead.
But it would have been
he'd already missed one.
It would have been a more interesting finish, because there'd have been 1:48 left on the clock.
Exactly.
And
there was a lot of things, a lot of
different what you wanted. And given the Chiefs, there probably could have been another 2 touchdowns. Because the Chiefs defense might have let them score, and then Mahomes would have probably scored anyway. So then we'd have been going, oh my God, this is the greatest Super Bowl in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, whatever. It is what it is. Yeah, that's flipped. Fun.
Yeah.
Whatever. We're experts on bowling, not football, so let's get on with that. Also, Barnes' team won, so let's move along quickly.
Man,
I have an Ebonite Vortex 2. Wow, that's an old one.
Yeah.
And a Storm Fate. What would be a good ball to Infinite Physics? So yeah, we no, not really.
I used it a little bit, and it was okay.
Darren Tang had it on the rack. He was just threatening his back a couple of times. Adam wants you to go on a run for the ages. He said, I want to see Chris Barnes win 26 titles on the regular tour. So
to get to 26 these days, probably going to have to be on the other tour to get to that one. So
26 is going to be a run there.
Yeah. I'd like to get to 20.
But like I say, if you have any in-depth questions that you want answered, super chats are available. So we've been using those the last few weeks. We've had some people using them. We really appreciate it. So just a heads up, we will be answering questions as we see them. But if you want a real breakdown of a question, super chats is the way forward. So what have we been using? So this is when you get super prepared. But so I've got my sheet in front of me from the US Open, and I have Barnes' sheet in front of me from the US Open. So I registered Infinite Physics, didn't throw a shot with it. Reality, the Belmo spare ball, the TNT, threw one shot with it. The Night Road, the IQ Tour, barely threw a shot with it. The Sunstorm got me in trouble the first game on the flat. Didn't use it again. Phase 2, the Eternity and the Fate. So out of the 10 balls that I registered, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 10 balls I probably threw a combined 10 shots with. So that's kind of the way it goes with the US Open. After that, I brought in another Phase 2. I brought in a dark code that I didn't really use very much. So I brought in a couple more balls. The majority of the time at the US Open, on the first one, I used the Reality and the Eternity. And then after that, I really used the Phase 2 and the Night Road. That was what I used the majority of, with a little bit of Fate mixed in. I brought in a Zen, that's right, for match play that I used a decent bit. Yeah, funny you should say that. At the US Open that we bowled in Syracuse, by the time I got to match play, I had 4 Phase 2s, I think.
Yeah.
So, Barnzy, on the other hand.
So we need Shawnee tomorrow. Or actually, I do today. I have a pro-am tonight.
Let me see if I can bring this in, because this is a pretty funny picture.
Yeah.
So Chris checked Absolute, Eternity, Phase 2, Axiom Pearl, Infinite Physics, X2, Night Road, Emerald, Pitch Black, and the Ice. Now, of those 10, were there any that you didn't really get to use at all?
Well, the Ice got used always. Unfortunately. Let's see. Eternity did not get much play. It was more shape. There's probably some spots where it could have seen some daylight. Infinite Physics, very, very few shots. X2, very few shots. I kind of expected that second pattern to turn into something a little higher scoring, and it really never did for me. And so that's where a couple of those balls were in there to try and create some shape. Night Road did not see much. Emerald did. Axiom Pearl, just a few shots. Really, Phase 2, Absolute, and then the Emerald was kind of my breakdown. But it obviously, with my score, it didn't have a lot of great answers. I use the Absolute a lot. That one with tons of surface on it to kind of lock up and go forward, which is the opposite of how really they're supposed to be used. But I've since got another one that hooks way more than that one does, and to use that. But so that didn't come into play much the first week. We used Formula 45, which is closer to Formula 65. It really hooks in the front, and so the Absolute was pretty early last week on that short pattern, even though in theory it should be in play. So I did use the Eternity a little bit. I used Pitch Black, obviously, because everyone did. But I did not score particularly great with it. Phase 2 was a better play for me. But I didn't really use it that much the first 2 blocks. And so by the time I got to it, it was a little late in the game. I used a Hustle USA a little bit, actually quite a bit, late in the blocks. But getting through those first 3 games was not great for me. And that was the tale of the week for me, was how many pins I lost in those first 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, I had a very strange tournament. I mean, I started off, I used reactive basically the whole time until the last block. For Chris, yes. For me, no. But anyway, I started off and I had something along the lines of 2-0, 230, 270. And then we made the flip to the low end. And I think in hindsight, I decided that lane was doing something based on logic and it wasn't necessarily the way. Lane 9 was super tight, and I thought that when I threw my first shot, because I was using a pin down Supernova, and I don't have that much experience with that ball. And once it wiggled on me, I kind of was like, oh God, there's too much urethane to use this. In hindsight, that lane was just tight as shit, and I should have just moved right with that ball, and it would have probably been fine. So I ended up getting on the merry-go-round with the balls. I shot 190 on that pair, which wasn't terrible. Went to the next pair, and I should have made the change straight back to the Supernova, but I didn't. And then I shot 170, and it kind of, the block got away from me a little bit. So came out the next block, tried to make a couple of changes, kind of bowled similar-ish score. Felt like I was bowling fairly well, just wasn't striking enough, got 9 a lot. I kind of chatted with Dom. We had a lot of the same deal. He was a little better than I was, but yeah, it was just a weird, it was a weird scenario. Last block, I decided to use the urethane because, well, why not? Basically had the same start. I had 30 over after 2. So it didn't really make that much difference to me.
Yeah, I tried to get slow enough. I was bowling with Chapman and Lavery, who both had bowled fairly well. Lavery was actually leader after the first couple of days. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to throw it slow enough to get where they are and cross 10, 11, 12. And it was more of the same. It was strike flat 10, strike flat 10, flush 3, 6, 10, finally throw a double, 2, 8. And that's kind of how it went. I just couldn't keep up with the moves. I had to throw it way too slow to really go around it like they were going through it. And then it went to glue up in the front from time to time. And,
yeah, it's one of the things that you got to understand with urethane. Like, the harder you can throw it while making it slow down, the better, because you don't have to move as much in the front part of the lane. When you're throwing it as slow as me and Chris do, to be forced to move left, it's just asking for problems, because the second it changes just a little bit, you're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, you can knock over the pins with either speed or with angle, and with urethane, you're not doing it with angle, and therein lies the whole controversy of urethane and it getting softer anyway. Because as it's gotten softer, you can throw it firmer, which then gives you more off hits, and that's for everybody. And so the time to get away from urethane is when it basically flat 10s. The amount of change you have to make in rotation, it's an old school, hand positions. I mean, they're still laying around from my college days when we threw that as the only option, but most of them don't apply super well these days. And so the flat 10 is really the tell, the highlight kind of combinations back to back. So I saw Patrick Dahm use a tropical surge and win a regional. What about a review? Well, you're gonna have to ask Patrick Dahm, because he's the only one of the three of us that has one.
Yeah, that's one that we're probably going to stay away from. We've got a super chat. I'll answer that in 1 second. Oh, there you go. That's a very long question.
Yep.
We're bowling on Bear.
Bear's not as flat as it used to be, but it's still relatively flat. Yes.
Why is the pitch black so good compared to the new? Because the newer releases are trying to be off the pitch black. They're not really straight urethane options. They're trying to be something that appeals to the masses. So that's why, in my opinion. Right. Super chat. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. My Arsenal shiny dark code, 2000 grit Zen, hustle wine with a high road pearl being shipped. Which ball shall I look into at the store matchmaker? Absolute Fate, Eternity, TNT, Revenant. Well, if you're at a matchmaker, I would look at them all. But just remember that it's okay to take your own balls as well, especially if they're Storm. So it gives you an idea. So maybe throw your, the dark code and the Zen, because that's the top of your bag. I would think that you probably need to look at something a little stronger than a dark code. That might be the TNT if you can make it continue. It might also be something like an Infinite Physics.
The TNT will be the slowest, and then you have Absolute and Eternity that could fit at the top of that bag.
Yeah, I think the Absolute's probably a little less overall hook than the Dark Code for me. But that's debatable. Like, they're in the same ballpark. The Eternity is definitely going to be stronger than your Dark Code. It's going to be earlier
and a little stronger than that Zen. It'll be some more similar to the Zen with a little bit more core.
Yeah.
Fate will be in between your Hustle and
Zen.
The Fate and the Zen, and then the Revenant is kind of a stronger, probably a little stronger version of the Hustle line.
Yeah. So the balls that, if they're the only ones you're looking at, the ones that I would think that would fill a gap most for you looking at your arsenal would be the TNT and the Eternity. Just, looking at what you've got there. But remember, like I say, take your own balls, throw those as well against the ones, so you at least get an idea of where they might fit.
For sure.
But again, thanks for the super chat. There's that. I did that with reactive. So no review on it. It's just
it just trophies. We're not he's not bringing anybody else to his party. That's what he said. It's just
ring 10s and 4-pin in league. Any on how to handle the walled cliffed house conditions? Mike Heaton in the chat says, sounds like you're creating too much angle, which is probably a good option. A good answer. It really depends. How are the guys in your league bowling who are doing well? What's working? 4-pin, 10-pin is almost always the wrong ball.
In general, ring 10 4-pin sounds like it's actually a little bit early, which generally is how you handle the cliff. We've used Shiny Nova, Axiom Pearls, some of those older type balls. Exotic Gem has been okay for us on the cliff. As far as on the bigger side, you get into some, obviously urethane blends that out, but that probably is way more than ring 10 4-pin. Tells me that it's probably getting in front of it a little bit. So I
think in general, lower RG symmetrical balls are usually pretty good on the house shot. Kind of pearl ASIMs are usually pretty good on the house shot. In general, like solid asymmetrical balls are usually too strong for house. They burn up too much in the dry, and often they just kind of create bad angles. In my experience, like looking around at what the majority of people are using, balls that I've seen do really well in league tend to be like slightly cleaner ASIMs or the sort of phase 2 Zen type of balls. That's just kind of how it's been around here anyway. Bowling with Fef, there we go. Nice bowling YouTube channel. Are there any hustle lines that have been discontinued? Yes, but I don't know which one. But if you go on the website, they won't be there anymore. So that's
the original one. I think the camo's discontinued now. The Hustle Wine, I believe it is on its way out, but I'm not sure about that. I'll have to. That's not something I've looked into. So
here's a pretty good. Also shout out to Jim Callahan today, Storm's tour manager. It's his birthday, so happy birthday, Jimbo.
Michael Haggett as well.
Oh boy.
So, response to both. When pros talk about slow response balls versus quick response, what are they referring to? They're referring to their response time to both friction and oil. Quick response will skid a lot off oil and carry down and slow response are more like snow tires, and they kind of blend out all those things in the wet dry. So you have wet dry, you need slow response. You have way blended, then you want quick to take advantage of it.
Think about, it's just a different way of saying smooth versus angular in layman's terms. Where quick response is actually quite interesting is when you play on a lane that, like the burn squad at the Masters. Late on that, you want slow response balls often, because people think that quick response balls are ones that skid a lot. Quick response balls respond quickly to friction. So if the friction's really close to you, a quick response ball is possibly the worst thing on earth. Yet your mind thinks, well, the high road pearl skids more than the phase 2. I should be using the high road pearl because they're dry in the front. But you get past the point where that's helpful because it's so dry there that the high road pearl actually grabs faster and ends up going more forward. So that's where quick response versus slow response is actually a little bit more relevant, I think. It's just a fancy way. In general, on most terms, on most conditions, it's just a fancy way of talking about balls being smooth versus balls being angular.
True. What was the U.S. Open Ryan's first? It was, and his reaction was he was very disappointed, like most of us are after the first U.S. Open. They were hard, but he was not under any illusions they were going to be other way. His teammates, including Keplinger, who did make the top 24, had bowled it before. Obviously, Stu and I did a decent job of preparing him for what was coming his way. And at Wichita State, they bowled down in the rec center, which is one of the harder buildings on the planet. And they never put out anything easy down there. So he saw plenty of difficult conditions, but seeing it and then bowling on it with the tour guys is, it's a different experience. And, he didn't play as well as he needed to and got behind early. And once you got behind early, he was with Stu on that A squad on the one pattern we hadn't seen before. And once he got behind, that tournament is brutal once you're chasing.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually look at the scores outside of Keplinger, the Team USA, the junior Team USA were very average. They finished way down, which isn't totally unexpected.
No,
it's a tournament you kind of have to have seen. Shout out to me and Dom. Our first US Opens, I came 27th. Dom led for 2 blocks.
Yeah. At Carolier?
Bowled at Carolier, yeah. That was when we had the famous conversation with Chris. Chris, can we buy you a drink? It depends. Do I have to buy you one back? Yes. Who knew we'd come full circle? What a great drink that was to buy, Chris.
What equipment do you use typically on league versus tour? I bowl at Louisville, and the typical house shot is not so typical at Louisville. Varies week to week from flat to totally burned. It's way more about having 30-year-old panels and 3-year-old panels on the same lane and not on the pair, which is... I typically don't really use like different balls in league. Most of the time in league, I'm using a 5.5-inch pin just because most of the time in league, I'm using one of the newer pieces that I have. And that's how I drill all the first ones so that we can keep the reviews kind of consistent. So in general, I'm using a 5.5-inch pin in league. Balls that I've really cracked them with in the last sort of like 12 months. Phase 2 has been pretty good. The Zen is like 50-50. It's either amazing or awful, depending which center I'm at. Infinite Physics has been good. I had a cheeky set with the Supernova where I had 597 for 2. What else have I used? In general, it's more rounded balls with varying covers, clean to certain. At a place like Louisville, it's basically 30-year-old HPL. So you don't get to use super strong balls and I say that most of the time, they do have lane machine issues there. There's some weeks when they've been pretty tight and you've been able to throw some surface, but for the most part, it's really balls that are a little bit more rounded, or balls that you can round off yourself. Like I say, Infinite Physics is a very versatile ball for us, and so I've been able to use that at Louisville and had some luck. Used Fate there a little bit. I've used a dark coat or a night road, a stronger night road to kind of help blend out once I get through the front. And so, actually, a lot of the balls are fairly similar. Just the tools I use change more, where I try and roll it a lot more in league to try and blend out the wet dry, versus league where or tour where I'm trying to create shape.
Okay, we got another super chat coming in. Hey, Jeremy. Thanks again. I'm starting to be able to get my hand under the ball and create more revs. Well, good work. That's a timing thing for most people at home. Thinking about keeping your hand under the ball isn't really the deal. It's more about getting your timing right for that. Now my speed is too slow. What is the correct way to increase ball speed? Chris, why don't you go first? And then if I have a different of opinion with you on this, we can just kind of discuss different ways of.
Yeah, there's two general schools of thought, and one is creating faster feet, and the other way is to create a longer swing. And some people believe lowering the swing and dropping it in a little faster, and that move will help get your feet to move quicker. And the other way is to move the ball up and create a longer swing, which then creates a longer pendulum. And there's not necessarily a one size fits all. I've seen both of them work very well for different types of players. Some people feet just aren't going to move faster, whether physical or age or whatever. And so the only way to really do it is to elongate that swing a little bit.
I know it's only a small profile picture, but Jeremy doesn't look like he's Norm Duke sized. So in general, I think that moving the ball up a little bit higher is probably the way to go.
Creating a little bit longer swing.
I think the taller you are, it's better to move up and down. If you're a little shorter, Norm Duke, EJ Tackett type of deal, moving your feet faster is the big key.
You will notice, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you will notice that smaller statured players generally will have a pretty long push away. Now, like you said, Jeremy's not necessarily slight of built, but Linda, Carolyn, Norm have very long pushways. Even Pete, it's out there a long ways, and that helps create that longer swing for them. With no push away and nothing to get it started, it's very difficult for them to get all the pieces moving together to create speed.
So I hope that was useful. Follow up. Let us know what you think. If you've got any other questions with that, just follow up, Jeremy. But here you go. Oh, it hasn't quite come through. I see it on the YouTube side. I just don't see it in the questions. Okay. He says, yeah, I'm about 6'5" and 225. So yeah, you're not Norm Duke shape.
No. So my guess is your swing is probably pretty short. Your backswing is short, and you're cupping it underneath. And I could be wrong about that, but so getting that swing a little longer and like I said, what Stu's talking about moving it up and creating a longer swing arc should help with the speed part, because it's certainly not a strength issue.
Okay, so Sir Biscuit from Australia, mate, says, I recently watched the documentary A League of Ordinary Gentlemen. Always a classic. Love it. Chris, what was it like to be in the thick of the changes early on, and what are your opinions of the progress made to the PBA before and after filming had concluded?
There was the big changes there. Steve Miller was a He's a protagonist. He was looking to make changes. He was sure he was right, and he was not afraid to be the bad guy to change, 40 some years of history to something that he thought was going to be a better version. And so, in there was the big speech in Erie, which ironically was the last time we were in Erie, a long time, and probably the best tour stop historically, from a fan and support standpoint. And he made no bones about it. If you didn't like what was going on, you could bowl the other tour, which didn't exist. So
I didn't think that documentary was really designed to be a positive for bowling. Like the guys who came out, they weren't really their sole reason for doing that wasn't to have a positive impact on the sport.
Well, being involved, and I had a camera for a lot of it, and obviously I had a very small role at the end because they had no idea where it was going to go.
Yeah.
They didn't really know anything about bowling at the beginning, other than they knew there's a cast of characters, and what it ended up being is a human life story about basically here's what happens when you're kind of, Wayne Webb did not get portrayed in a very flattering light. Super successful and working in a pro shop, making $8.50 an hour, after 20 titles or 18 titles or whatever it was.
Oh no, he's got 20.
Yeah.
No, the only reason why I'm saying it is because Tommy borrowed his 20 medallion after he beat you and walked around in it.
Yeah. No, Wayne is one of the more successful guys of all time. He doesn't get much credit for it, but he was a guy who won life of the party. Pete won a lot of money and didn't have a lot to show for it at the end. And Walter had won a lot of money and had a lot to show for it.
Yes.
And still has most of it. Probably the biggest thing I'm irritated about that was we had footage of the boys being born, and we had it on their camera, and they never returned any of it. So
that sucks.
Yeah, that was bad, and they didn't make any efforts to afterwards either. Once they got what they needed out of it, but very much more a human interest story about the perils of success and how you use that success. A relative role, riches to rags story to some extent, just on a much more normal level than the pro athletes of today. Do it with millions more.
Super chats are flying in today. Mr. Clifton, I have high axis tilt. When you're saying axis tilt, 30 degrees of axis tilt, that sounds like an insane amount.
Good layout with ASIM balls with mass bias about 4 inches. For symmetrical ball drillings, pin up, pin down, pin in finger. I've been doing a lot of pin in finger stuff here lately with some relative success. It lowers some of the numbers around a little bit, and makes them more on the medium-ish side of things. But if you like ASIM balls, I don't think putting the pins in the fingers is not what you're looking for.
Yeah. So let's break this down a little bit. So if you've got a pin up asymmetrical ball with the mass about 4 inches from the thumb, unless you've got a really long pin, that ball's flaring a ton. Because you have the mass bias being strong. Think of the mass bias as like a secondary pin. So if you have it like short, and this is kind of layman's terms, but if you have it like a short mass bias, you're adding to the flare as well of the original pin. So when you have like strong mass biases, 4 inches, and strong pins, the ball's going to flare a ton. Consequently, if you want looking at symmetrical balls, if you go pin down, or even the pin in the finger, you're kind of like reducing the overall flare of the ball. The diff's going to be lower. So I think that you might actually have more success. There isn't really quite enough information in this for me to make a perfect guess, but I think that you might actually have more success if you did something like a 5-inch pin, but with like a 2-inch buffer. Because having the shorter pin buffer is that's actually going to increase the flare a little bit. So that might be another option that you might like. are you speed dominant? Yeah, throw it 16 miles an hour. With only 16 miles an hour, I'm like kind of surprised. Well, Chris has gone and back.
Wow.
Is 16 miles an hour it's saying on the screens? I guess it probably is.
Yeah, so it's
probably
18
near
and a half
18.
or so.
Yeah. So you have pretty good ball speed. Like I say, I would suggest doing something like a 5-inch pin with a 2-inch buffer. You're going to get a pretty decent amount of flare out the symmetrical balls. And that should give you something that might be a little bit more comparable to the flare you're seeing out the asymmetrical balls. So that would be my best guess.
Let me get back here and see.
Yes, we're talking about Jeremy's swing. Yeah, you're going to have to wait for a little bit if you make the swing longer. But yeah.
Eternity, in my opinion, TNT is earlier.
I mean, that is just so
yeah,
relative.
it's better for what? TNT is probably a little earlier than a Zen Master, in my opinion, although I've seen some Zen Masters that were plenty early as well. It's more similar to that than any other ball.
Yeah, I think to me, the TNT is the most comparable ball we've had in the last few years is probably the Axiom.
Okay.
The regular Axiom.
Yeah,
pretty cover strong ball. I've actually gone the other way. I drilled one today, last night. I had a late night drill session. I actually drilled one with a 4 1/4 inch pin, a TNT.
Yeah.
I've just decided that the cover wants to hook early, so I'm going to get the weight block to help it. Rather than having the weight block and the cover fighting against each other, I'm just going to try and lean in, so to speak, to the early, more rounded motion and see if that gives me a better option. Because, like I say, the first one I drilled, you can see it in the ball review. I've got a little bit behind on uploading some stuff. I've got Chris's matches to still upload, and I've got a match between me and Chris using the Eternity that I've got to get uploaded. So look out for some content coming. I will try and get it done later tonight, I think.
Quest, I think this is okay. PBR with surface is good on the fresh. Night Road wrapping 10, same with High Road Pearl. So it's probably getting behind it just a little bit. Polished Supernova is quite a step away from Night Road and High Road Pearl, but those polished big balls they've had quite a bit of success on some of the league patterns. And so, yeah. Chris, Hustle Link replacement, Hustle Wine has been pretty good. Revenant is a little stronger version of that. Night Road is probably not the 4K one, but one with polish on is probably the closest thing. It's a little bit more ball, but that's probably the closest thing right now.
A couple more super chats coming in. So we're going to answer those, and then we'll get back to regular questions. What is the ball that you like that no one else does on staff? For example, I heard on Tang's channel that Barnes likes the idle synergy, and so do I.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked those super clean covers because then it lets me do what I'm probably, more of what I like to do, which is really roll it. And then, on the tour these days, I had a DCT that I liked, a very smooth shape, and EPX before that. I like those super smooth shapes to play out on the gutter and basically create the urethane shape. Now everybody just uses urethane to do it.
I was about to say, in a few weeks' time, Barnes might be answering this by saying the absolute, because I think a bunch of people are throwing them because of the new balls, but I haven't necessarily seen anybody but Chris be super successful with it. I'm sure people can find some YouTube footage of people striking with it, but in general, Chris has had the most success with that one so far. Another ball that Chris uses now that I almost see nobody else use, maybe Darren Tag, is the Emerald.
Yeah.
Not many people use that. I'm sure
we'll
Chris
see if the IQ Ruby may.
About to say, I'm sure you were excited when that one came down the pipe.
It's got holes in it. I saw something go through the chat. We got holes in that and the DNA both. Maybe we'll try and figure out. Maybe we can do a test or a review in Shawnee. If not, we'll try and get one done.
For me, the answer to this was always the high RG solid in the Storm range. So I love the Victory Road solid. I love the Torrent. The Rocket was pretty good. Almost nobody else used those balls. In recent times, I haven't really been that big of a fan of that ball when it's come out. When it comes out, you know it's not going to be out for long. It's kind of the courtesy release. It never seems to be the one that everybody wants to buy. Everybody wants to buy the shiny pearl version, but
yeah.
Okay, next question, James. Long time listener.
Yes.
What is usually going on when you ring 10 pins for weeks and months on end? What's usually going on is your ball is going a little bit too far down the lane and you are really close to striking.
Certainly one of the most frustrating things in the game.
What I would suggest to you is taking, if you're using like a shiny ball, but regardless, almost no matter what, is just adding a hair more surface to the ball is probably the easiest way to try and get the ball to pick up a little sooner. And once it picks up a little sooner, you should get out of purgatory, which is the ring 10 zone. Didn't necessarily help me last week on the short pattern. It's a little harder on short patterns than it is on, say, a house shot. But it is super frustrating. But having a little more surface on the ball and knowing that you're close, when you're flat tenning in general, you're not even remotely close. But when you ring tenning all the time, you're super close to popping off a really big score. You've just got to like, if you want to do it without surface, what you kind of need to do is you kind of need to have your hand a little more forward rather than as much axis rotation. I think
slower.
that's generally
that's another way to create it a little bit.
It's a lot harder to do it with speed because in general, if you slow the speed down, the ball's just going to hook more. So then, especially if you're on the house shot, you're going to move left. And then you're going to create the same angle just from a little further left.
Right.
So it's generally roll or surface. Thanks again for the super chat. I hope that helps. The next time we're on, let us know if the extra bit of surface helped. Because I really think if you're leaving a lot of ring 10s, you could pop off a pretty big number if you can just dial the surface in a little bit better.
Joker, do you think the PBA should adopt a point system so a certain amount of people can get on tour? Well, they do have a point system, and the top 50 get priority entry right now. Whether that's what they should be doing or not, I don't know. We have a couple of prize funds coming up later on that pay 1 and 2 with an exempt deal, which is much closer to how
which tournaments are they?
Jackson and Kokomo. I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I hadn't really read anything about that. Is that changed?
I neither. It was up on the site. It actually came up yesterday during our Super Bowl party. So.
Okay. So they changed the price from then.
I believe so.
I guess the last check isn't going to pay as much.
No, but it actually looks okay. I mean, it's like 600 or whatever. It's 24. Yeah, it's still very solid. So it looks too bad. This is more for you, I assume. How was bowling with Darren Tang, and what's he need to do to take the next step?
How was it bowling with Darren? Very familiar. Me and Darren bowl together all the best time. It's ridiculous. Like in the COVID, we bowled 3 events in a row together. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what they're using to do it out, but Nick Pate bowls with Ronnie all the time. I bowl with Darren all the time.
It's random, but every random thing has an algorithm that it uses, and so you end up with the same guys. If the field does not change a lot, and depending on where you're at in the alphabet, which I assume it's kind of how it uses, you can end up with the same guys a bunch.
What's funny is,
or next to,
I would assume that it's because T and W, because there isn't anybody whose name starts with U. And there's Chris Vi who starts with V, and then it's W.
Yeah.
But I never bowl with Mikey, ever. It's so weird. But Ronnie and Nick Pate bowl together all the time as well. It's kind of strange. What does Darren need to do to take the next steps? I don't necessarily think he hasn't taken the next steps. He's an established player on tour. He's won a title. I just think that look at the guys in the top few spots on tour. I mean, outside of Dom and Chris Prather, and I mean, Dom was excellent last year and is struggling a little bit this year with the changing in oils. I just think that it's kind of weird because the guys who have the games that to me are less niche have now become more niche. It's really weird because Dom is like either great or he struggles, whereas Dom's game looks way more rounded and he's got way more things he can do than, say, one of the two-handers. But they're in play almost every week. And Dom isn't. And I think that Darren falls into that category. When you don't have a 520 rev rate, you kind of end up becoming niche, even though you're not in that range. So,
yeah, I would say Darren has become really good at using urethane. He's one of the best one-handers at using urethane on tour. Expanding that into his reactive arsenal, I guess, would probably be, it's easy to say, much tougher to do, but having more good weeks when it's not urethane, I guess. But I mean, Darren's been a good player for a while. Team USA regularly, which is not an easy thing to accomplish either. Good spare shooter.
I just think
he has a fair amount of tools.
I think the one thing for Darren is his technique, and I'm not sitting in a glass house here, but his technique is very easy for him to get out of time, or because it's a little weird. Like his timing is a little weird, and the thing that makes that difficult is you have to practice a ton to keep that in check. And that's one of the things that I think for Darren, like, I feel like sometimes he has a couple of blocks where he gets a little bit out of time and stuff because his technique's a little bit like that. But like I say, I think Darren's a really good player. I just think that he's in an environment currently that isn't necessarily particularly favorable. And if the lane guy continues to use Formula 45, I think you're going to see the guys who did well 2 years ago bowl well, and the guys who bowled well last year not do as well. Yeah. Like Chris Vi was right at the top again. Sam Cooley didn't make a cut last year, won the tournament this week. Like, that doesn't make it better or worse. It's just how
guys
it is.
They have a hard time getting their ball to slow down enough to round off enough because it gets down the lane easily and it goes sideways.
But there are other players that happens to as well that don't have super high rev rates. Like Frankie does way better on these oils that Bill O'Neill. Like,
they can separate a little bit more from the rest of the guys. They've figured out a way to get it through that better than the field. Yeah. And so it's just a skill set. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just
and it's very easy for it to become like almost personal and right or wrong, because if you do well on one and the other guy does well on the other one, they're like, oh my God, he's such a hack. He only does well on that one. Well, why is the one you do well on? Well, because it's human nature.
Right.
Like, you're always going to get frustrated. Like, it's not a personal thing. It's just how it is. It's just, like I say, it's just human nature.
Boston patch match with you and Angelo. Okay.
Sorry. Didn't see that another question come up. My bad. What was the question?
Yes, I will throw the ruby and the emerald in my review. That's for sure. Watch match with you and Angelo, and you weren't happy. Brad threw a Brooklyn in kind of in your face thing. He wasn't in my face. I just said I threw it out there in the interview. Brad and I have bowled matches since the 90s in the high rollers, and anytime we bowl plenty of best of sevens against each other. We're friends, but not so much when we bowl. And everything is on the table when we bowl, sort of when you're on the approach. So
let me just explain this in real quick terms. Brad's a New Yorker.
yeah. And
he ain't taking shit. And Chris is quite happy. If the other guy's happy, let's throw down.
Yeah. I don't mind. I won't start it, generally speaking, but I'm not afraid to play. So when's that? Good morning.
Tina's getting my presents.
Yeah.
I didn't misspeak. I didn't say presents.
Flush in the Pocket podcast. Thanks for joining us. What are our goals for this season? Sue's knocked off the first one. He has made money this year. So
I don't necessarily come in with goals. My goals are more, I know it's going to sound like cliche, but my goals are more about trying to control the things that I can control, like being just making better shots. Like I felt like last week in Springfield for the majority of that tournament, I felt really happy with what I did. I got my hand in a pretty good spot, and I was like trying to focus on that more than I was on getting away from that to try and make ball reaction, because I don't think that that's the key to my success. I think being able to make more good shots in the long run for the season is the main key. So should we talk a little bit about my 17th game, Chris, of the tournament?
No.
When I went into the 8th frame.
You don't want too many games like this.
So I went into the 8th frame of game 17 with the opportunity to shoot 264. I came out of that frame with the opportunity to shoot 204. I'll let you do the math.
Yeah. And you'd already had a frame in that game, right?
No, I hadn't had a zero until then.
That wasn't the
no, that was the previous game.
Yeah, that was
on a double.
6-1.
I only did it the one time the previous game. No,
I gotcha.
And the old 2-bag.
Well, in my version of the story, you had 6-1 on a double, then another 3-bagger, and then 0-0. No, Stu, this is my story now, not yours. So, in my story,
but I couldn't have got to 264 at that case. So, anyway, it was a little bit of a kick in the pills.
Yeah, Alan Riley, longtime viewer, no-time contributor. Alan, get that right? Yes. It is strong, and there are times when you let those things get lane shined up, and they get a little weak, and you're a little fluffy at the bottom, and you need to have a little more giddy up on the ball. Absolute a slow response ball. The one I have is the second one I have. Not nearly so much. So,
T-Dub, an interesting question. I don't think that in general centers are changing the oil on purpose. I think what usually happens, and what's happening a lot at the minute, especially if you're a Brunswick center, is there just isn't a shit ton of options.
They don't have any oils right now.
So you call up the distributor,
yeah,
and you just end up with what they've got, and it's just
they only have two choices, I believe, at the moment, and it's Absolute Control mostly, which is a little slicker oil, closer to some of the older school, thinner but slicker, if that makes sense. The thicker they are, the slower they are in the front.
Given just Mal's, for example, they're a Kegel center. We had Terrain until probably about 9 months ago. Then they went to Prodigy, which is like way slicker.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they're back on Curve, which is kind of in between.
Yeah.
So it can feel like that the lane guy's screwing with the pattern every week. But change it. Yeah. It's just a situation of where the world is with supply.
Yeah, lots of, even Kegel does not have as many options as they normally would. And so depending on your distributor for your center, when they run out, you kind of get what they have. Yes, thanks for buying the hoodie. Our apologies for not playing well enough to be there. So, yeah, we use box finish on a lot of balls, but we also tailor a few of them. Stu tailors them a little bit more as he goes. I tend to get them at a stage and then leave them where I like them to fit in my arsenal off of each other. And I just don't worry about it when that ball's not in play for that week versus trying to make it.
For me, in general, the dull balls I tend to use at the box finish. The shiny balls I've been messing around with, trying to find an option that I like. So, but in the past, yeah, up, and it's not even close for me.
Yeah, almost way more up than down in general, and that's now that flips when I go to the senior tour a little bit. I have way more pin downs because I have way more wet dry because the field is to the right of me. Down smooths out the wet dry a little bit. Up lets it keep going, which is way more the challenge on the big tour.
So in case anybody was listening to this without watching, the question was, do you prefer pin up or pin down?
Yeah,
no, that was my fault. I just answered it straight away, and we've been shouted at in the comments about that.
Yep. Before, so. Michael Haggett, happy birthday, big boy. Hey, that's right.
A bunt cake.
A bunt cake. There's a good story about that, about a cruise, and there's all kinds of things there. So,
this question is for Stu, Linda, or blah blah blah. What bowling ball would you recommend to someone who's just getting back into bowling?
Depending on your level, obviously, Infinite Physics has been a fan. We're a pretty big fan of that. In general,
I guess it depends on how long you've been out. If you've been out for quite a while, maybe even like a Burner Pearl might be a good option.
Something more in the hustle burner line to kind of reintroduce yourself at a lower cost.
Yeah. If your last ball was the Pro Zone Azure, then technology's moved on a minute.
It is.
Although the balls probably still don't hook any earlier than that one.
No, that one's just that's a urethane ball before its time. Larry saw him at the regional in Crawfordsville, and Erie was the best stop. It was I needed Goon. Yeah, if you can track those boys down, he's talking about the League of Ordinary Gentlemen footage. If you got a guy, you let me know. I tried, and now I don't even know how to get a hold of him anymore. So, Stu, how are you liking 15?
Yeah, so far. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan this week, so I got 9, a ton, but I don't know that was necessarily the ball because I've got good enough memories of getting 9 with 16 as well. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like I'm able to get my hand in some different spots that are what I've been trying to do for a little while. I don't greatly notice the carry differences, to be perfectly honest. I do know
2 weeks have been a little interesting anyway because there's not a lot of free hook.
I think that Shawnee might be a place where I kind of miss the 16 because I feel like in Shawnee that going through the pins a little straighter is better. And I also felt like I never, ever had carry issues in Shawnee at any point. And the last time I went there, I did. So I think that Shawnee is one of the few places because the lane surface is pretty good.
Pretty tight down lane.
Yeah. Like when we've been there, they tend to use, I think, ice oil most of the time. So the lanes usually play fairly slick. And I'm trying to WWRD, what would Rash do? And keeping it more in front of me and rolling it more has looked really good there. And it didn't look as really good with the 15s. But a small price to pay.
On the speed thing, I know the PBA speeds are off the hand and most centers are way further down the lane, so it's hard to compare. Just add about 2.5 to what you see down lane. If your ball picks up and hooks, it's between 2 and 3, depending on how much friction it sees on the way. Versus if you play the shim, then it's way closer to 1.5 to 2. If your ball actually sees friction, changes directions, then it's way closer to 2.5 at least. So if it says 16.5 up there, it's way closer to 19 off your hand.
We're going back a minute here. The
Oof.
tombstone. Yes, it literally looked like a tombstone.
Yes, yeah, the tombstone was not usable either. That one, although I think it is Waka's only title, ironically enough. Let's see, Pin Gods was a better documentary. And one of those professionals from Columbia 300 with a signature. Interesting story. Obviously, I have a signature. I have a loopy C with a B on there. Kyle Burns at the time basically just took the signature off my contract and put it on the ball on that one. So, yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for all of the guys who came through with super chats. One person here. No, I can't sell balls. Where'd you live? If you live close to Austin, come on down.
Get them. All right.
Yeah. Thanks again to all the guys with the super chats. We really appreciate it. Like I say, if you're going to do a super chat, you're probably going to get a more in-depth answer. But we appreciate everybody showing out. It was another good show. Sorry we got our schedule a little wrong, but we're just trying to go with the flow and get a few shows in. So thanks again for everybody who came out. And yeah, hopefully Shawnee is a successful week. And hopefully my 4.5 inch. Oh, Tina's telling me about the board.
Oh yeah, $10 wise, 70K pour. Tell the story real quick.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I'd already done this, but I haven't. I spoke to Chris about it before the show started. So the $10 wise, $70 pour is in relationship to Bobby Campignoli. He won the tap, but he didn't enter the $10 progressive, which was paying $70,000. It's not quite as bad as it seems because the $70 progressive was based on throwing about 5 strikes. So, and with every strike he got, he had to risk what he'd won to win some more. So it was really $10 wise, $1,500 pour because that's what he would have got. But if he hadn't have struck, and if you watch his last shot, when he needed, I think, 8 to win, and he hit the 6 pin and managed to still strike. Maybe you picked the right option. But yes, the TAT is going to pay. If somebody hits the progressive at the TAT in the summer, it's going to pay more than a PBA major. So fun times. Storm sponsor the TAT. So if you want to rewatch it, go over to the Storm Facebook channel, probably on the Storm YouTube channel also now. But I just watched it on Facebook this morning. It was kind of a cool deal, the way they had it set up with the different camera angles. Andre Gonzalez also made it. Shout out to one of my league bowling friends from Arizona, Charlie Price. He didn't have the best game in that, in the shootout, but congrats on winning your division. Yeah, Andre did leave the 8-pin a lot. Please excuse me for not crying a river for a 2-handed lefty leaving the 8-pin. To quote Tina's mom, oh, well.
Yeah, that's actually fixable. So, but, yeah.
I guess he missed one of them as well. So
yeah, you keep repeating the same mistake. It's on you at some point. It's not quite a 6-pin, but it's not also.
I have no idea. My TAC career is 3 games total, and I'm never going to be able to do it again.
None. So,
all right.
All right, guys. We will not be here Thursday, but we will try and get something done next week. There's a chance it will also be Monday because of the schedule in Wichita. So stay tuned. Keep your eyes open. We'll have content coming at you soon, as Stu said. And gosh, until next time, if you get a choice, please support the sponsors that support us. Storm, Rotogrip, Niner Global, Coolwick, Bowlers Mart, Fire Lake Bowling Center, Lightning Strikes, and Platinum Ford. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.
Thanks for watching. See you later.